actually ask that the conference starts, let me introduce who is sitting here at the top table. And of course, there are a whole number of veterans and stalwarts behind us, so we are all very important. Let's not make it sound as if the top table is the only important grouping. So let me introduce Comrade Wally Serote, who's the chair of the Stalwarts and Veterans. Next to him is Comrade Frank Chikane. Next to Comrade Frank Chikane is Comrade Gertrude Shope. Next to Comrade Gertrude is, I call him Uncle Stan, but Comrade Stanley Sangweni, Comrade Albertina Lutuli, and Dumi Matabane at the end. Comrade Dumi Matabane, just now you'll tell me that I have. Let me start to my left. Comrade Mary Metcalf, Comrade Cheryl Carolus, Comrade Zola Squia, Comrade, I always know where Sipiwe Nyanda, better known as Gubuza, and Comrade Murphy Murabe, and I'm Faisal Randera. Okay, so I'm going to ask Comrade Wally Serote just to take you through this journey that we started last year already. We were reminded by the rector of the church earlier on that we started having meetings in this church almost a year ago. But the group had, the Stalwarts and Veterans had actually started meeting prior to that in another venue. Comrade Wally?
Comrade Faisal, thank you very much, and members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. This journey by the veterans and stalwarts started 2 years ago after we had drafted a document called For the Sake of Our Future, which is a document that really we refer to in terms of how we keep the unity of this group and how we move forward. That forward movement can be defined in two ways. When we started, we said the ANC is in a deep crisis. That's 2 years ago. And that because the ANC is in a deep crisis, we, the veterans and stalwarts, want to save our glorious movement. Save it by, meaning by that the ANC must be very close to our people. That is the culture, tradition of the ANC. It must have its ears on the ground to listen very carefully to what our people are saying and provide leadership. We thought that had been seriously compromised. It had moved far away from there. We also said that there were factions in the ANC, there is corruption, gatekeeping, etc., which indicated further that the ANC had entered a crisis moment of its life, unprecedented. Because of this, we made two suggestions. We wanted to sit with the officials of the ANC and explain to them our understanding of where the ANC is and therefore also where the country is in a crisis. It took a very long time for us to be able to have audience with the officials. Eventually we met with them, and that is the time when we put before them the fact of the manner to resolve this crisis, this deep crisis, and the manner to save the ANC can't be in any other way but to institute a national consultative conference which will then explore all the issues which led the ANC to be in crisis, but also to explore all the issues which must redirect the ANC to its glory, back to its glory. We did not agree when we said that in our first few meetings, but eventually I must say that the NEC saw a point in this and agreed that the manner to do that is to set up a process of the National Consultative Conference. We had subsequent other meetings after that in which we were exploring the whole issue of the National Consultative Conference. One of the last meetings that we had with the National Working Committee, I must express that we are utterly shocked when some of the members of that National Working Committee expressed the fact that the ANC and the NEC had never before agreed on the processes of the National Consultative Conference. However, in that meeting, we also agreed, after negotiating and so on, that we should put 6 aside to begin discussions. 6 aside, in terms of the veterans and stalwarts, we also, by that time, had created a partnership with the MK Council, and therefore 3 members were going to come from the MK Council, 3 from the veterans and stalwarts. As we are seated here, after that agreement, we have never met. We've tried to create conditions for a meeting through all kinds of communications. The last communication that we received from the Secretary General was to say, was requesting for a meeting on Monday, this past Monday. We said, can we meet on Monday? And the idea was so that after we had met, we would come to this meeting of the veterans and stalwarts to report about what progress has been made between us as 6 aside and them as 6 aside. The Secretary General sent me an SMS in which he said the Monday will be too congested. So as it is now, we're still waiting to see how we can still institute that meeting. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Comrades Wally. Can I just say that I think everybody would agree that the events of the last week have had massive implications for our country and for the ANC. And I'm therefore going to ask Comrade Frank firstly to take us through the events that we still mourn. I mean, the death of Comrade Kathy Kathrada, and some of the important issues that arose coming out of that funeral. Comrade Frank.
Thank you, Comrade Faisal. I thought that we would announce the decisions of this meeting before I spoke about this matter, but let me speak about it. There are three critical things that happened in the last week or so, but this builds up from the time of the meeting with the working committee, that the delegation that went there, which Comrade Wali is talking about, got a message that indicated we do have a crisis, and it is a serious crisis. But the passing away of Comrade Kathy demonstrated the level of crisis we are facing. Firstly, the Minister of Finance was recalled to come back from the mission he was undertaking. And then we lost Comrade Kathy, and we went into a period of mourning. And I wasn't in that country then, I came later. And the government declared it an official funeral, fly flags, half-mast. The funeral happened, and I imagine the letter of Comrade Kathy is the one that started the fire. And he had written that letter, a very humble letter, to make an appeal to the president. And unfortunately, there was no acknowledgement or response to the letter. And then after the funeral and the letter was referred to, a memorial service was organized, which was going to be an official memorial service. What happened thereafter was something that one could never imagine would happen, that you couldn't have a memorial service planned and postpone it or cancel it. I'm not sure about the actual language used, but whatever the case may be, it was a request or statement that says, postpone your mourning. You are in the middle of a process of mourning, family, community, nation. And then you are asked, no, postpone it or cancel it. Now, you can't cancel a moment of mourning, and you can't say to the family, don't mourn. But I think the real crisis within the African National Congress is the fact that a leader of the caliber of Comrade Kathy, who's isitwalandwe within the ANC, would have a funeral where the president can be present, or where the president is not interacting with the family. That demonstrates the level of crisis the organization finds itself in. It is unimaginable that that could happen within the movement. And that tells you that we have got a huge crisis in that movement. Then came the reshuffling of cabinet, which then worsened the situation as if the business of government was more important than the mourning that the nation was going through. And we thought it's important, we discussed it here, and there's deep pain about what happened. I remember that Comrade Kathy is part of this veterans group to try to find solutions to the problem. And this is how we went through the period of mourning. And we thought we need to state that we were deeply disturbed about what happened, particularly the postponement or cancellation of the memorial service in honor of Comrade Kathy.
Thank you, Comrade Frank. You know, the other important event that took place in this week of course, has been the President's announcement of his new cabinet and what followed afterwards. So I'm going to ask Comrade Cheryl just to take us through our understanding of what happened and the implications thereof. We need to move all of this to the side.
Oh, gosh.
All the way down.
Sorry, sir. And the phones. We can't prejudice the more modern people who move around with mobile devices.
Should put you in the middle.
Thank you, Comrade Faisal. As Comrade Frank said, the funeral and the reshuffling of the cabinet were two very painful events for us as cadres of the movement to witness, and quite shocking. We were in quite disbelief. And there were a number of features that President Zuma crossed lines that is almost unimaginable of a loyal and a disciplined ANC cadre. Firstly, the fact that President Zuma decided to elevate the holding of a normal cabinet meeting over and above that, of mourning with the family of Isitwa Landwe, is just breathtakingly shocking in terms of its callousness and the lack of feeling. The Kathrada family is a family of long-standing stature in the African National Congress. The wife of Comrade Kathy, Barbara Hogan, is actually an Mkonto Sizwe soldier who served 10 years in prison. And the president to this day has not bothered to pick up a phone to either the family or the wife, who was a Qaeda herself, to offer his condolences. It is unheard of in the culture of the ANC, and indeed, I would say in the world, no decent president or leader of an organization, especially of a movement like the ANC, could ever be thought to behave like that. And that's just an awful line that the president crossed. And then in terms of the reshuffling of the cabinet, even the manner in which the president recalled Comrade Pravin Gordhan seemed to almost speak to wanting to inflict maximum humiliation on a comrade. The president saw Comrade Pravin on the Sunday. Had he really not thought, did he really just wake up on the Monday morning with something and decided he's going to reshuffle his cabinet? We all know it couldn't have happened like that. He must have known on Sunday when he gave Comrade Pravin official authority to embark on his journey. So one just asks, why? Why do you let this man go? And then you let him land, and in full glare of the world, the callousness of it's almost as if you wanted to inflict ultimate humiliation. But perhaps even more than that, the fact that you do this with a total disregard for the fact that we know our country is watched, and often unfairly so, in terms of the movements of our government and behavior. We get judged sometimes on fairly spurious grounds. You're the leader of this country. You're the leader of the organization in charge of this country, and you have no regard for the kind of message that it would send when you recall your Minister of Finance, who's about to meet key stakeholders. And this, by the way, this journey is in fact part of the detailed process that we as a country put our Ministers of Finance, and we expect them to do, in the build up to the next round of ratings, because we understand the impact of the cost of a downgrade, whether we agree with the downgrade, whether we feel it's warranted or not warranted. But there's just certain things you have to do as the Minister of Finance in your job description. You have to make sure that the markets and our supporters throughout the world understand what we're doing. And to let this man set up a range of meetings with key decision makers, and then these people make the time. Some of them have flown from outside of London and outside of New York in order to be there, and you just disrespect them. It's breathtaking again that the head of state and head of government can actually be so disregarding of the message it would send to key decision makers and supporters of our country in the manner that he does this. And then our president crosses another line, and that he uses the prerogative of the president. Well, perhaps we need to put that into some context. The president of the country becomes the president of the country because he is deployed by the African National Congress as a member of parliament in the first instance, and that makes him eligible as the president. It has never happened in this country, or indeed in any country in the world, any democracy other than some dictatorship, that some person just sits somewhere in a corner and decides to fire a whole raft of people, and then to appoint people to take responsibility to execute key programs of government, which in fact were crafted in the main by your party. The president this time is the first president in the history of our democracy to actually decide to delink himself completely from the highest elected office bearers in his organization, the African National Congress. The president signed he has no accountability to any of the structures of the ANC. And him and his jacket is going to make this decision. In our discussions here, we also said we know that nobody makes serious decisions like this. So the president is consulting somewhere. This man who is mandated by the ANC and who in the past knows how we have appointed the cabinet. The Secretary General and the other officials of the ANC were in that room. And he decided they don't have a place. When he went and reported to them to say this is what he is thinking, and they said to him that they cannot support him. They think he is wrong and it is ill-considered. It's not in the best interest of the country or of the organization to embark on that journey. He just decided to actually defy them. This has never, ever happened in the history of the ANC, that one person, and especially the president of the organization, will just take it upon himself to defy his comrades and proceed with a plan that they have in fact resisted. Then the president also decides to cock a snook at Parliament and at the Constitutional Court. In his decision in who he would appoint, in his appointment of two of these comrades, Minister Matabile Dlamini and Minister Faith Mutambe. Both of these comrades, the officials themselves had said to the president, if he wishes to reshuffle, they would then say he must take into account performance and execute that. Well, he ignored them because they, in fact, raised these underperformers. But more than the officials of the ANC, the Constitutional Court had found Minister Matabile Dlamini reckless, callous, and uncaring in how she had managed her portfolio. And he had asked that this matter be addressed, and in fact, he went so far as to ask her why she should not have to pay for this vexatious lawsuit and costs, because she had acknowledged to the court herself that she had been negligent in the execution of a very sensitive portfolio that impacts on the most indigent people in our society. The president takes it upon himself, before Minister Dlamini has responded to the court asking her to explain herself, he decides to affirm her, notwithstanding this cloud hanging over her head that the court has pronounced on. Minister Mutambe, an ANC-led parliament, actually goes through a process and finds her wanting in the manner in which she has executed the responsibilities in relation to the public broadcaster. This has cost taxpayers' money because it was a long, detailed, carefully thought through and managed process. And they make some findings about how she has conducted herself. The president not only decides to ignore them, he in fact decides to promote Minister Mutambe into an even more sensitive and responsible ministry, without any regard to the views that his comrades in the top 6 had expressed. And for us, this president has actually decided to take the role of the president of the country as one that is totally delinked and in defiance of his organization and the Constitutional Court and Parliament. And we believe that the ANC needs to take regard of this, because it's a very dangerous line and precedent that the president is trying to say the president of this country, who is put there by the ANC, is a law unto himself, and in fact is fully entitled to defy the organization. We took a very dim view of this, and we expect the organization to do so too. Thank you, Comrade Chair.
Comrade Cheryl. Members of the media, what we've reported so far.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Shame. You've become the chief marshal of the microphones here. You know, we all have responsibilities in life.
Okay, let me start again. Members of the media, what we've reported on so far, you would all agree, requires deep consideration and discussion and reflection on where our journey has taken us thus far, and is that enough? Do we need to go further in what we have put out to the ANC as well as to the public? I'm going to ask Comrade Murphy Morobe to take us through the decisions that the stalwarts and veterans made this morning. Comrade Murphy?
Thank you, Comrade Faisal. I think from the introductions you would have gotten the sense that the 3 hours we spent this morning from 10 a.m. were quite engaging and had to deal with issues that are very dear to us in terms of given who we are and what we represent in relation to the developments that have been outlined here. And so, in the end, it comes out down to about 4 key conclusions, points that we've arrived at. In addition to that, there will be other points that are more informational, but also related to the work that the stalwarts and veterans have been doing, will still do going forward, over and above the conclusions that I will take you through just now. I think there is no mistaking the fact that we recognize that the country has reached a particularly critical juncture that actually also required us as the veterans and stalwarts, to pick up our pace a little bit. We're not quite juvenile anymore, but however, the moment and the time required us to really engage with this issue. You would have noticed from the previous engagements that you've had with us, I know that there are certain questions you kept on posing to us that relate to taking this action rather than that action. And we have consistently adopted a stance that has to convey the fact that we see our role as being essentially facilitative, and hence the approaches that we've been making to the leadership of the ANC. And I think that we've maintained a posture that makes it possible for anyone else, whether they are in the executive or anywhere else, could relate and speak to us so that there is access points for engagement on the issues that are important to everyone. And over and above anything, I think that even in our engagement with yourselves, we have conveyed an understanding of the role that a free and critical media plays and has to continue to play in our country. And that we respect. After all, we were part of the architects, members who constructed the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. So in that way, we're not acting out of kilt with it. So in considering all of these issues that have been raised here today, we have identified the need for strong and clear leadership that is necessary and required in our country now. And also have noted the calls that are emerging now from the alliance partners, the SSCP, COSATU, and we now know also of the journey of the Integrity Commission of the ANC in respect to this matter. And to that extent, the stalwarts and veterans this morning were quite unanimous in coming to the view that we align ourselves primarily with the spirit and the content of the message that Ahmed Kathrada had left us. And to that extent, would then connect our own position right now based on all of these developments that have been outlined, that they have left us with no other conclusion, notwithstanding our continued desire to play the role to facilitate, that the need to call on the ANC to recall the President of the Republic is now long overdue. And we fully subscribe to that view, and that is a unanimous view that the veterans and stalwarts came up with. And we focus on the ANC here. I know that other calls that Zuma must resign and Zuma must fall, but as ANC members and veterans and stalwarts, we focus this on the responsibility and accountability of the elected structures of the organization to do what they are empowered to do in the face of the developments and the events that have been described so explicitly as to the extent of contravention, not only of the Constitution, in fact, but also of the precepts of the ANC, as contained in the Constitution of the ANC itself, in terms of how the process of reshuffle and recall and the dismissal of ministers has taken place now. But importantly, the second point is a point that still keeps us on mission as veterans and stalwarts. That is that we will continue to pursue the consultative conference. And in this case, our preference still remains that of having it de-linked from the policy conference. And this is in keeping with our call. And we are putting it on record that if this process initiated with the ANC does not progress, we are in fact readying ourselves to consider alternatives to it. Because we believe that as an option, it actually is one of the options that presented the ANC with the best possible way in which to engage on these matters. And perhaps if we had done that, my suspicion is that, my sense is that we would not actually have gotten to this point where we are. But as the chair has indicated, there's prevarication, there's avoidance, there's kicking for touch, and all manner of things that suggest that either we are not taken seriously, or in fact, their belief is that there is no crisis. Now, I don't know how much deeper in the sand, as a leader, you can have your head in, not to recognize that ordinary people in South Africa, those of you who go to funerals, to weddings, can attest to the fact that that is a sentiment that people have there, outside there, that there is something terribly wrong in the state of the ANC, which is everyone else in the country. Now with the downgrade, not only that, we're all going to be poorer, but we'll still pay their salaries at the end of the month anyway. Point number 3, veterans as individuals would remain encouraged because, as you know, that there's lots of activities that have begun to take place. We want to make sure that we don't lose focus of what our essential mandate and strategy is as contained in our document for the sake of our country. However, we also have to recognize the fact that people are on the move. There is serious consternation, and as people who've been in the movement for many years as activists, we have a very clear sense of where the trajectory in terms of mass actions that are taking place is leading to. And therefore, we also recognize that some amongst us would be associated with those developments. And for us, as the stalwarts and veterans, we are encouraged by this, by the exercise of people's choice to support activities of the Alliance of Patriotic Structures. Because the point about them, they are not about the ANC. They are primarily about South Africa. They are about the constitution of the country. And therefore, anyone who senses that their constitution is being undermined have got all the right to actually go out into the streets, to protest, to campaign, to ensure that they protect the constitution. That is built into our constitution, the right for people to engage in these ways. Point number 4. There is a growing din of voices of our people who are acting in a disciplined way to express their dissatisfaction. And this we fully support, and that dealing with this blatant violation of the Constitution and the ignoring of the Constitutional Court, over and above the peaceful, or rather the approaches that we make as veterans and stalwarts, it should be possible, it should be correct that people utilize every democratic, peaceful way available to them to raise their voice so that those who are in power can hear them. And we support disciplined and principled action to ensure that our organization, the ANC, does the honorable thing in the end and recalls the president to make sure that we make progress and begin the process of rebuilding the organization and hopefully giving our country a break so that we can then seriously consider and look back at where it's gone wrong, and so that we ensure that we do not have a repeat of this going forward. So those are the key points that we've arrived at, but I should also alert you to the fact that there will be a number of other conferences taking place later on in April and May, one of which will involve the MK Veterans and Veteran Council and Veterans League, to which, in fact, as the stalwarts will be associated with. But all of those are part of the processes that people are taking on their own, especially in the absence of any clear leadership relating to this matter. It should be expected that people will take the initiative, and people as they must. And I think the Constitution, if it could speak, it would say it expects them to do nothing less to ensure its protection and development. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to, before I open up, there's one more issue that is one Comrade Trevor, who's sitting behind me, to speak to, and it was a view that was also expressed in the meeting today, and that's around the formation of a commission of elders.
Faisal, why don't you let Trevor sit in this?
Trevor, do you want to come and sit here?
We don't have the musical microphone.
Thank you. Good afternoon. The issue that was agreed this morning is that there would be a committee, a council of elders, who are the senior comrades in the stalwarts and veterans, who would then meet with the top 6 to really understand how we got to the point that we are now, so that the ANC leadership is as factionalized as it is, but also to say that to prepare a report that would go to a special NEC that would address some of the issues that are raised, and in particular to hear firsthand what is happening, and also to meet with the caucus of the ANC in Parliament, and really find out why as Parliament, that the ANC has not been able to hold the executive to account, as 2 constitutional court decisions have indicated. Both the President and the Parliament has not followed the Constitution. So that would be the approach, but the main question here is that we rise above the factions within the ANC and guide the ANC towards ensuring that it is able to lead our nation and in unison be able to achieve the goals that the stalwarts and the veterans and the ANC has always stood for, and that is to ensure a non-racial, non-sexist, democratic society that is biased towards the poor and the working class and marginalized. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we come to the point where you are now allowed to ask questions. Sorry. Mary, did you want to? No, she's. Can I see your hand up. Can I first go to this side and then we'll come to that side? So let's take 5 questions from this side. You're just falling out of the middle, so I'm going to... how many hands do we have on this side? 1? Only 1? 2, 3. Okay, so let's start with you. Can you introduce yourself and where you're from?
I know that you're saying discussions will continue in the Cabinet Consultative Conference, but the ANC seems to agree to hold the Consultative Conference, but for the first 2 days of the Policy Conference. And I hear you still want to argue and influence for the delinking of the 2 conferences. Would you be willing to compromise, or are you going to explore other options if the ANC says this is the option we had for the first 2 days? The second question is on the motion of no confidence that I'm sure you know about. If it does, if the Speaker of Parliament does decide to sort of call in the National Assembly, what would be your advice to the ANC members of Parliament? Would you say they must vote according to their conscience, or must they toe the party line?
From the citizens.
The President of his country is not someone who can just move so easily, push. What I'm trying to say that it's possible that the President may not respond in the way that we expect. What are you going to do or say if the President decides that he's not going anywhere, he will stay?
There was some third hand here. Thank you.
Marika Kumar from Jacaranda FM. Clement largely touched on my question. It's a similar question we asked Kusatu earlier today. As stalwarts of the movement, what would be better? Because of course there is the motion of no confidence. Would it be better if it went to Parliament and chips fall where they may and maybe he's removed there, or would it be better for you guys who have been going to be removed from inside, from within the structure? I know you said you want the ANC to report it, but can you flesh out on that a little bit, and what that would entail, how that would work? And do you believe that he will take what you guys are saying seriously? You're not just going to brush this off and say, well, just a bunch of old people, he doesn't care.
Okay. Can I ask Comrade Wally to take the question on the National Consultative Conference and whether there's a willingness to compromise on whether it's linked to the policy conference or not?
Well, I think you should examine the reasons why we say it must be delayed. If we say the ANC is in deep crisis, and if we point out why we say so, you'll also realize that it's not a matter where I come today, we discuss it, and we agree. It's not like, it cannot be like that. But also, if you take into consideration that we have actually said, as we save the ANC, we want to renew the ANC. This is a protracted process which must be taken into consideration and which is extremely essential to saving the ANC and renewing it. Should there be any situation which can convince us that we should consider other ways, of course we're not going to say no. But as things stand now, and for the reasons that I've given, it is extremely important that our leadership understand that the ANC is in dire straits, deep-seated, especially if you take into consideration what has happened currently. Very deep crisis. It cannot be a matter of 2 days, as far as we're concerned. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you. And you had a second question, and that was around. Now, I know what the question is, so let me put it to Comrade Cheryl, and that is around the question of a vote of no confidence in the Constituent Assembly. Or Mary, will you take it? And what advice would we give when that arises? Okay.
Sorry. So
Can
clever,
you move these things along?
picking up the baton there. I thought I'll save you.
Or maybe that's a good thing.
Some of the questions are saying what if and what next. And I think we are very clear that we're starting from the central principled point that the ANC must do the right thing. And because fundamentally of two key events over the last week, that the Integrity Commission has requested the ANC to resign, that our
President to resign. I thought you said
sorry. The Integrity Commission has requested the President to resign, and because our alliance partners at national level, the SACP and COSATU, have requested the President to resign, that our starting point is that the ANC must do the right thing, and the ANC must act in accordance with their appreciation of the crisis that we have. It should not reach the point of a vote in Parliament if the ANC does the right thing. And that the call of the veterans to our movement, any subsequent decisions we would need to reconsider in the light of events. But we want to stay with that principled point.
Okay. I'm coming to the question from the citizen, and that's around the question of what happens if there's a rejection, no response, as with the letter with Comrade Kathy. A year later, there was no response, and of course, we want the written letters without any response. So, have you responded to that already?
yes.
Then can I come to the last one, which is
Unless you want the more dramatic answer.
all right.
That's it.
That question about do we go the parliamentary route or the... Oh, can I ask the mics to stay here and I move, and whoever's going to answer the question moves to my point, okay? So, answer as well. Okay. All right, can we get the next round of questions? One, 2, 3. Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm Ranjini Sami from the Daily Maverick. As I understand it, you have all raised problems with the standing of the ANC, the leadership of the ANC already. And that is why you called for a National Consultative Conference, because you believe that the people who are acting in the leadership structures of the ANC have been so contaminated that they're incapable of electing a new leadership in December, for example, and taking decisions at the policy conference. And that is my understanding of why you're asking for a National Consultative Conference. Why then do you think that the ANC, which you're calling for now to recall the president, will do the right thing? Surely that it's now a moot point because they have protected the president historically up to this point. And as you know, probably from this afternoon's National Working Committee, the same is expected. Surely we're beyond that point now, and it takes for more proactive action. And that the only possible way that it could happen is through a parliamentary vote. So considering the weight of the people in this room, should you not be marshalling society rather to act, rather than simply calling on the ANC to recall its president? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tidi Madia from News 24. My question is similar to what Ranjini just asked now. I've kind of walked this road with you from the beginning as far as Star Wars are concerned. are was wondering, are there any thoughts about strategy? I remember speaking to someone, one of the Star Wars, and they said to me, We should have actually been upfront from the beginning saying, Zuma, you need to go, as opposed to being kind and trying to negotiate with the leadership, because either way you would have ended up where you are today. And because what I keep thinking is that you say that they don't seem to take you seriously, and you've also said that the recall is long overdue. Should there not have been an issue around strategy, or should there not be now an issue around strategy and changing tactics, because it hasn't worked clearly? Thank you.
So you said that it's only leaderships that President will unilaterally as ministers. And considering what the President said last year, that if we give him 6 months as a dictator, he would make quite a big mistake. Is he at that juncture now? Are you saying that the President is a dictator? Are you saying that he's like in South Africa dictatorship? That's the one thing. And lastly, you said that he is not being accountable to the ANC, he's not accountable to the ANC, and that is consulting elsewhere. What do you mean by that? Do you by any chance have a specific name for that?
Okay, can I ask Comrade Frank to take the hot seat there and take the questions, because they both relate.
Yeah.
Right?
Can you repeat them? I thought the last one was a joke.
Why don't we marshal society?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think the joke is head, so we others could deal with that. Let me just say that on the issue about why don't we marshal society, I thought the question was answered in the preparations, that, I mean, in the presentations, that we recognize, I mean, the anger of the people who are unhappy about what's happening. They operate at the level of the constitution of the country, not just at the level of the ANC. And the people of South Africa are basically saying, please fix this, or otherwise we will fix it ourselves. So I think it's a choice, really, of the African National Congress to listen, the leadership, to listen to the people and do what is right. And if the African National Congress doesn't do it, then of course the people will do it. And we hope that the leadership of the African National Congress will take this matter seriously and take radical decisions to put back the movement back to its trajectory. The question about strategy, I think our strategy this far has been to do whatever is possible to get the leadership and the members of the African National Congress to do what is right. And everybody knows what needs to be done, and that they have to be bold enough, take leadership. The African National Congress is a movement that believes it's a leader of society, and therefore needs to take leadership. And that's what we've been working on. Beyond that, we'll talk about it when the time comes.
Can I ask Comrade Wally to, and before Murphy, Comrade Wally to also add to what Frank has said?
Yes, I just wanted to add the point that coupled with the processes of the national consultative conference, we have also elaborated on the question of national dialogues, which would take care of what is being raised here. The national dialogues will have to be extended to supporters of the ANC, to the nation at large, to discuss the future of this country. And therefore the two would complement each other, the National Consultative Conference, the national dialogues. Thank you very much.
I think an important point to make is that we are all schooled in the politics of mobilization for specific issues if one is changed. And I think you would have noticed that there's been a very conscious avoidance on our part to run to the end part, the conclusion. Even in this part about recall, we'd come to it now, not out of context, out of any, because we've just woken up. There was a clear understanding on our part when we had our first meeting, even at our first press conferences, that part of the exercise that we're embarking upon is one of also arousing consciousness, because it doesn't help for us to be the only ones that are conscious and then expect everybody else to act at the same level of consciousness on any issue. So we have to lay the basis that will give, in fact, credibility to any call that is much more stronger that we'll make over time. So sometimes we get too slow, but I think as you've also seen, because it is a matter that touches people in so many ways, and people respond, and people act. So at certain points, leaders or initiators have to get to a point where they catch up with where people are, because I think what we're trying to avoid is to put ourselves as leaders of any, because we had put our role initially as being operating within the ANC. Now that's the basis on which everyone was gathered. To get to a point where we then have these bigger strategies that sound very radical, etc., it's got to be done with the consultation of everyone here and to get everyone on the same page. That is basically the way we do things, and I don't think it will change. Right now we are at a point where society has begun to move, and we've been quite mindful of the fact that we now also have to upgrade the way we interact with those, in fact, initiatives to make ourselves relevant to the original task for which we've set ourselves. So in that way, others will do what they need to do because we create the conditions for that to be possible.
Thank you. Now Cheryl to take a question from the journalist from the Independent.
Yes, we are very worried that President Zuma has crossed lines that was unthinkable even a year ago. As an ANC deployee who is not representing his own jacket, but in fact is representing the wishes of the African National Congress, which has in fact found expression through our people giving us a significant majority in Parliament because they expect us to give life to those expectations that they have. And it beggars belief that any cadre of the movement can arrogate to themselves the right to not only defy the movement, but to actively divide the movement. The fact that the president just thinks he can move without any regard for the strong views that's expressed by the 6 elected office bearers of the movement is quite shocking, and it is in fact an indication by the president that this is how he wishes to now carry on in his term. It has never happened, and there is absolutely there should be no room for doubt that this is an anti-ANC way of behaving. No president in the ANC has done this. I want to reiterate the fact that the president becomes the president by virtue of the fact that he is an ANC member who is deployed as a member of Parliament in the first instance. There is no classes of members of the ANC or classes of members of Parliament. And in fact, if anything, we expect the president, as in fact all his predecessors have done, to act to in fact subject yourself to an even higher level of accountability than mere other members of Parliament. Can you imagine if a chair of a standing committee just acts without consulting with the ANC in how they should execute their role? It is just unthinkable. Why should the president, as the head of the executive, be any different from any other member? And we believe it's a dangerous sign to the country and to the ANC as the custodians of the confidence of the country through the majority in Parliament, for us to take this lying down, that the President does not consult, and I said is not accountable. But, as I said earlier, I cannot accept that this President just sits somewhere in the corner in his yard and decides, you know what, he wakes up on Monday morning and decides, nah, I think I should just reshuffle this cabinet. We know it doesn't happen like that. He consults, he gets advice, people give him ideas. We want to know who are those people, and we're asking the ANC structures to wake up to the fact that the President says he's not that, they are not those people. Well, who are these people? Who are the President's handlers? He must tell us who they are. The nation deserves to know it is. Up until now, the nation entrusted the African National Congress to put the right president in place who consults with that organization, the ANC, who they give their vote to in elections. And we asked them to consider very carefully that these same people in 2019 will have the right to decide whether they trust the accountability processes of the African National Congress and whether they give them their vote or not. So we think the President has crossed a new line that he had never dared to cross before, and he's developed a sense of impunity that he is untouchable. He is not. He's accountable to the members of the African National Congress and the leaders that they put in place in the top 6 structures to act as his sounding board when he makes these decisions.
And that's why to underline that the call really is specific to both his role as President of the ANC and President of the Republic.
Okay. Are there any more questions? Ma'am. Sorry, can you raise your voice?
Raise my voice. Last week we heard Cyril expecting his views on the firing of Kazim as well as the I just wanted to know from the people sitting here, has anyone spoken to any of the top 6 to find out what their thinking is around this matter, or how have you dealt with them? And the other question I wanted to ask is, do you have an idea of who should take over leadership? Or are you just putting the president?
Well, I mean, this is why we're setting up, sorry, the commission, sorry, carry on. So that's fine.
Sorry, somebody's leaving, sorry.
Yes, it's the time and flights.
Yeah, people have flights to catch. We should round up. Carry on.
Sorry,
Further questions?
Sorry, do you want to put your question as well?
As I understand, you said this call relates to the President's role as President of the ANC and the country. So he will argue that he is a democratically elected President of the ANC and the country. So how do you expect him to step down as ANC President? And secondly, can you give us some commentary on your view of the new finance minister and whether he is able to navigate South Africa through the current financial crisis?
Can I just say one thing which I want to remind ourselves of is that there was an integrity commission finding and which was communicated to the President in December of last year to say that he had been found wanting and in violation of the Constitution and the values and principles of the ANC. And the Integrity Commission actually asked him to step down. In September of 2015 at the National General Council, there was a decision taken that a decision of the Integrity Commission is something that the NEC of the ANC and the officials must implement. Remember, John Block was the first example of that decision being carried through. Before, there was this thing about innocent until proven guilty, and in fact, that policy conference of the ANC in September of 2015 decided that the decisions of the Integrity Commission is a decision which the movement must implement together with the people concerned. And if the Integrity Committee had decided in December of last year to in fact say to the President that their finding is he had brought the ANC into disrepute, he had violated the ANC's constitution, values and principles, and he should step down. We are calling upon the ANC to implement its own policy decisions. We're going to another policy conference. Are we going to again just sit there and have some hot air, and we're not going to implement basic principles like that? So, I mean, it actually flows from that principle. I just wanted to bring that one back in there. The question of the leaders, sorry, Murphy, did you want to?
Wally, do you want to take that question about whether we've spoken to anybody in the top six about the changes that have taken place in the executive arm of government, cabinet, i.e., and whether we spoke to anybody in the top six about the replacement of Comrade Pravin. And then there was an associated question, which was that do we have a view on who should be taking over, who is saying that he must step down?
I think that Comrade Trevor went into detail to explain our approach to all of these issues that we are raising regarding the top six and so on, including the caucus of the ANC and so on, that a council of elders will be in place to do that. Commission, council, we're discussing that quite just now. Yes. That it will engage issues like that. But you should not also forget that we have said here that we are going to pursue the issue of the National Consultative Conference as far as possible as ANC members with ANC members. And that as things stand now, you have 6 aside to engage. So we'll still pursue that and see if it happens. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more hands. Oh, one more.
I'm sorry, I have a question about the new finance minister. What are your thoughts on him?
That's a detail, really. It's the principle, I mean, of reshuffling.
I think there's a broader principle in terms of the reshuffling to which you've commented, and therefore I don't think it would be appropriate for us to comment specifically on him per se, because at the moment I don't think we are qualified to do so.
Okay. Can I, before we close?
Before you close,
Sorry.
I think we should have added the national provincial consultative conferences.
No,
Provincial, yeah, national provincial. So
No, provincial consultative.
Consultative conference taking place.
you are right. You are right. Yeah. Provincial consultative conferences. Yeah.
no, just the fact that there are already some provinces have decided,
Yeah.
and some of the alliance structures have decided to start consultative conferences. Because for us, it's obviously we're sitting with it's now official that the top 6 leaders of the ANC is factionalized. The NECs, all the structures of our movement, and we believe we need to talk. There are other issues like the fact that the president interprets his rights to what he can do, who he can ignore, and who he can ride roughshod over. He's now decided to write his own script on those matters. And we think those are all matters that the consultative conference needs to just recalibrate those divisions and the factions within our movement. We need to rise above that. But we also believe such national and provincial consultative conferences and national dialogues are places where if the ANC is divided, the country is divided. And we need to start healing and bringing our organization together in order so that we can do that. We think that we have become divided and polarized in a frightening way that leaves this country and the most vulnerable people in this country in the most disadvantageous position to cope with a global world that has become so much tougher on a number of levels. And we see those consultative processes and the dialogues that we're talking about as critical processes to begin to heal us and to recalibrate what is the consensus that holds us together as an organization. What are the things that people died for and gave their lives for? Because some of that we seem to have lost. And so we are heartened by the fact that this process has already started, that there's provincial structures of the ANC who have already taken that decision, others are discussing it, and we want to see ourselves as part of such processes.
Okay, sorry, before I ask leave, I'm going to take the advantage of chairing here today and ask any of our most senior veterans sitting here in the front whether they want to say anything. And of course, Comrade Zola?
No, we're going to finish.
Are we all done? Okay. Thank you very much, members of the media.
Thank you.
We are.